In this lesson, we are going to talk about some basic principles of design and layout that can be applied to any visual. We're going to talk about size and scale, color, contrast, as well as the principles of similarity and proximity. First, let's talk about size and scale. Size is an effective tool to guide your viewer's eyes to a certain element of the design, because larger elements attract more attention than smaller ones. Because our mind associates size with importance, the largest elements of the design should be the most important, and the smaller elements the least important. This principle even overrides the natural order of reading. Notice in which order your eye goes through all these examples. Another important principle related to size is scale, which is the size of the element in comparison to another. A single object, no matter how big or small, has no scale until it's compared to another one. It allows us to create balance in the design and focus on dominant elements. The greater the scale, the greater the emphasis. Color is another visual organization tool that can draw attention to a certain point. Because we humans notice patterns, and especially the differences and the changes within the pattern, the color should be used consistently. You can break that color pattern only to signal a change in meaning. To use the color right, start planning your designs in black and white, only adding as many colors as the message demands. And also, try not to decorate with color. Color can play different roles in your designs. It can show differences and similarities. For example, to highlight the differences between two elements, you can use the opposite colors on the color wheel. This will create more contrast. My presentation for this course was also created with two opposite colors, blue and orange, for the same reason. For similar elements, use the same color or the one next to it on a wheel, or even different tones of the same color, like in this example. Color can also help readers find things and move them through information. For example, if your presentation contains 3 parts, you can choose one color for the headlines or other elements of each of the parts, and that will help your audience know exactly where they are. You can also apply the same color to the same kinds of elements, like this remember box. This will help lead your readers through information. Color can also convey meanings. Probably the easiest example for this is labeling the water taps with red and blue. For us, it's a natural choice because we associate red with fire and the warmest part of the spectrum, and blue with ice and the coldest part. Another examples are city maps that use color codes as well, where green symbolizes parks and wooden areas, blue for lakes and seas, brick colors for buildings, and yellow for sand. And lastly, color can show direction. Color saturation often indicates the progression of values. We expect light color values to be lower than dark color values. This rule can be used in timelines or in scales, like in this example. Now let's talk about the next principle, contrast. Dramatic shifts in color or size signal that something is different, and it grabs our attention. You can create contrast by changing from a light color to a darker one, or from a thin font to a heavy one. Contrast provokes our visual senses. We like it because it makes it easier to digest and make sense of what we're seeing. For this reason, it can be a strong method to communicate visually without the presence of type. Contrast can be created with shape, color, size, or alignment. And speaking of alignment, there are 2 principles that we have to have in mind as well. First one is similarity. It's our human nature to group similar things together. Similarity can be used to tie together elements that might not be next to each other in the design. In these examples, the circles are all equally placed and the same size, but we automatically group them by color, even though there is no rhyme or other reason for their placement. Now, the second principle of alignment is proximity. It refers to how close the elements are to one another. Like in this example, the only thing that differentiates the group on the left from the one on the right is the spacing between the lines. And yet, your brain interprets the one on the right as 3 separate groups. Now that we have all the basic knowledge, we can move on to learn about different kinds of visuals, starting with quantitative ones.